Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Strazynski, and thanks so much for joining us on episode number 62 of Cards Chat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Today's guest is Darren Elias, a highly successful professional poker player, originally from Medford, New Jersey. This man holds the record for the most WPT titles at 4. He also has cashed at the WSOP a couple dozen times. He's won the WCOOP twice and has over 3.8 million in online earnings to go with over $9 million in live poker earnings. Darren is an ambassador for the Party Poker BetMGM and a card-carrying member of Tom Wheaton's Above the Felt talent agency. Plus, he's currently hosting an online poker tournament series called the End Boss Series, in which anyone who wishes to register has the opportunity to play him on the virtual felt. Today, we'll get to know him a little better. Darren, welcome to the Cards Chat podcast.
Thanks, Robbie. Happy to be here.
That's good to see you. And it's got to say, look, I've been in this industry quite a while. Obviously, you've been around also since, at least 2008 and before online. Our paths had never crossed, so I'm excited to get to meet you for the first time. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Funny we haven't met already. We've both been around a while, but today's the day.
Yeah, well, this is good, and hopefully we'll get the chance to meet in person another time too. But let's get to know you a little better. Let's get to learn your story. I'm wondering, how did you first discover the game of poker, and what was it that particularly appealed to you about it that you said, hey, I want to, get more into this and just make this my life?
Yeah, well, I started playing cards with my family when I was really young, particularly my grandmother. We'd play, it wasn't necessarily poker, but we'd play bridge, spades, hearts, and eventually some other versions of poker. We would play 5-card draw, heads up, which is ridiculous looking back. We'd play heads up, 5-card draw, high, like jacks are better to open or something. Go back and forth. But eventually that kind of transitioned into Texas Hold'em when Moneymaker won the main event, and I was in high school. We were all watching it. We were all playing home games. I was kind of in that era. And when I went to college, I started to play online. Started to find tournaments, small tournaments still, $5, $10, $20, but found a lot of success in college, and started to take it more seriously as I was making more money. And I like that it was, poker is fair, I would say, in the long term. I like that aspect of it, where if you put in the work and you play good poker in the long run, I mean, not in the short term, but in the long run, you will see your results.
Right. Well, you went to college, and I don't imagine you tried to get a degree in becoming a poker pro. Like, what did you originally think? Hey, I'm going to go ahead and try to pursue this. What was it?
I actually wanted to work for NASA. I was a math and physics guy. I had an affinity for numbers. I still do, and kind of had a double major, math and physics. But at the same time, I was becoming kind of engrossed in this poker journey. I was becoming really successful. My classes, my grades weren't very good as I was getting deeper into poker, sophomore, junior year. Things kind of came to a head, I think, summer of my senior year. I turned 21, and I had an internship to go to Hawaii in this observatory called Mauna Kea. I basically worked for NASA for the summer.
That's like the volcano over there, right?
Yeah, they have a big space observatory, but it's also a volcano. Also, the first summer I'm eligible to play World Series of Poker, I was turning 21. So I kind of had this like line in the sand I had to choose. Ended up going to Vegas, playing the World Series, changed my major to creative writing, which was a little less intensive, and classes weren't as demanding.
Yeah.
Took an extra year. I graduated with a writing degree, but originally went to school for physics.
Okay, interesting. And when you say things kind of came to a head, it's because you're just, making so much and being so successful online?
Yeah, I did really well online in college, and I was more passionate about poker at that. I still am passionate, but at that point, and kind of asking myself, yes, I could go do this. I'm interested in space and astronomy, but I'm going to be making less money than if I just continued playing poker. If everything goes well, which I just kept playing poker.
Any regrets? Is there something that says to you, when you see Elon Musk's, SpaceX going up, you ever say, hey, I could have maybe, done something like that?
Definitely. I'm still really interested in that stuff, and I read about it and I watch videos, and part of me wants to be one of those mission control guys in Houston. We have a problem. Like one of those guys in the in the booth, but I think I'd probably get sick of it after 6 months or a year, and I would probably want to come back to the felt.
All right. Well, thankfully, poker's not something at all that you're even close to sick of. You're just making all these sick runs. But let's go back to that first glorious Hendon Mob cash in 2008. You were 21 years old. And I couldn't help but notice an Australian flag. I mean, most folks don't go gallivanting off to Australia and hop in a 1500 as their first ever live poker event at 21. So you must have had some sort of, major successes online that made you say, you know what, let's go down under.
Yeah. Back then, I played a lot on Poker Stars and Full Tilt, and they kind of had this. They had a lot of live satellites where you would play a $500 or $1,000 tournament, and if you won, you get a package to go to London, Australia, Monte Carlo. So I would play those, and then I would just go and play and miss 2 weeks of school. So that was kind of contributing to my grades and stuff. But I went out there. I think I actually brought a couple college buddies, and we made a trip out of it. Went to Melbourne for a couple weeks, and it was amazing. I don't think I did too well money wise that trip, but it was fun getting into the live arena.
Okay. Oh, but I just want to touch a little bit on the online before we go a little bit more into the live.
Sure.
I mean, how long did it kind of take you to truly feel comfortable playing and sort of say to yourself, you know what, I'm good enough at this game to make a living, and I can beat a lot of people. I could really see, like you said, you're making money, but at 21 years old, you never know what's going to be. You have your whole life ahead of you. You sort of say, you know what, this is really what I'm going to do, and I can succeed at it. What was that point that happened?
It was probably after a couple years playing online, because I was playing such small stakes initially, where I was playing like 10 cent, 25 cent online. I'd win $8 in a session, and that's not real. That's not something you're going to build a career off of. So after a couple years, when I was kind of making six figures online playing tournaments, and I'm talking to my parents, and they're, oh, this is like real money. Like, I have the money. Like, I'm not like gambling and losing it back, and it's sustainable, and I feel good about the games I'm playing in. At that point, I kind of started to take it more seriously and be, oh, maybe this is a viable thing to do for a long time, and I enjoy it. So I would say a couple years, maybe sophomore, junior year of college, I really got serious.
Sure. And I know a lot of, poker pros, they have, and especially those that came up in that, moneymaker era, just coming out of college, that sort of age, money is one thing. And then there's, you got to tell your parents what you're going to do. So are they kind of like bottom line people? Well, if he's supporting himself, okay. Or were they kind of like, oh, we thought we'd have a rocket scientist. This is fun,
I would say right now they've like, at this point, it's 15 years later. I'm 35. They're my biggest fans. They support me, but there was definitely some growing pains, especially my father's a college football coach his whole career, kind of a straight edge, no nonsense guy. So when I was 16, 17 years old, gambling on the internet, that didn't go over so well. So it kind of goes with your last question, where I had to show him the results after a couple of years that this wasn't just some stupid thing I'm doing, that I actually was banking this money, and it's a real skill game. And kind of, with people not involved in poker, you always have to differentiate between gambling and poker, and this isn't a luck thing. So it took him a couple years to come around on that, and we had some disagreements along the way. But they're open-minded, and they've come around, and now my mom's texting me for chip stack up.
I love it. That's good. There's nothing like having your parents on your rails, your biggest fans.
Oh, yeah.
I imagine there are folks out there, most of us in the Cards Chat community, we're, serious recreational players. We enjoy the game, and, we obviously want to win. But I'm sure there's some people out there who also kind of say to themselves, I'm doing pretty good at this. Maybe I should give it a try. You've trodden that path. You've gone through it and made your way through poker to become the Darren Elias that we all know. What kind of advice would you give to someone who says to themselves, you know what, I want to give this a try? Like, perhaps some of the things that from your experience that would be helpful to someone like that in that position.
It's tough, because I feel like recreational players, especially part-time players, are always at a little bit of a disadvantage as they move up, because they have other stuff going on. They have a job, they have commitments, time commitments, where whenever you're playing against, eventually you move up high enough in stakes, you're going to play against professional players who like, this is our life, this is our livelihood. We study poker, we breathe it 24/7. So you're always going to have that. And for people who treat it as a hobby and enjoy it, I would say try to leave it at that. Most of the time, the pro poker player life is not going to be as glamorous as you may think. Like, the grass is always greener. And I think most recreational players, if they were to quit their day job and really commit to poker and go pro, would probably make less money than they're making and not be as happy. So I would kind of say leave it as a hobby would be my tip, unless you're really crushing the game, really passionate about it, and ready to go all in and take the plunge.
And going all in means what exactly? What does it mean to be a professional in that sense?
I think you have to study. You really have to study off the felt, and you're going to need a kind of a network of people where you can bounce ideas off of, talk poker strategy, that kind of thing. Unless you're just naturally great instincts, gifted with that kind of stuff. That's huge to help getting into poker. And putting in the hours, just logging the hours, playing a lot, whether that be live or online. That kind of stuff is essential.
Sure. And, obviously, someone with your kind of experience could speak to that, being helpful, especially, in the dog eat dog days or shark eat shark days of 2021. Was that true back when you started as well? Did you right away sort of build up a network of peers who you could bounce hands off of, and you were in the lab all the time, or did that sort of come over time?
No, I would say I'm probably in the minority of like my path to where I went. What was more, I was alone for the most part. I didn't have a big community. I didn't study a lot. But as I talk with other people, I've realized like a lot of things come naturally to me in poker that don't come to others, and they can see the same results. They just need to study it and need to see it. So I'd say I'm probably an outlier in that regard, where my path does not look like most paths and would not be the path I would recommend. Okay. Because if you start to have these ideas in your head and you believe them and they're not right, you're going to lose a lot of money. Yeah. So you have to have somebody to check. And I mean, I have a small group now that I talk poker strategy with, but definitely less than most.
Cool. I think that self-awareness is very important. Thanks for that honesty. It's a good thing. So let's go back again a little bit. March 2008. That's when you went deep. I think you finished 16th or so at a tournament in the Win. And that's when you had your first live five-figure score for about 22K. You're 21 years old. At that point, did you sort of say to yourself, okay, I broke through, or was this luck boxing, or what was it like at that point?
That I remember that tournament pretty distinctly.
Oh, really?
I had already done very well online, so it wasn't like the money mattered a ton, like the five-figure cash off live. But I do remember I had driven out from college in California to Las Vegas. This was like a 3 or 4 day tournament. I'm on the bubble and I was missing finals week. So I was on this bubble and I'm like, I have to at least cash because I'm gonna fail this class. So I was playing like scared tight on the bubble. I just needed to min cash to make it worth the trip. And I got cash for 22,000. And it was a little different back then. That was a $10,000 tournament in 2008.
Yeah.
I didn't sell action. It wasn't what it is today, where like we didn't know about all the like ROIs and bankroll management. And I had 10,000. I drove out there. I played. I min cashed, and that's that.
Yikes. Okay. So was there a particular live score that you said, okay, I've broken through? I don't even know if that's the correct terminology to use, but like sort of an inflection point, because like, again, you had all of that online success. You were very comfortable. You clearly know what you're doing, but live is a little bit different. Was there a particular tournament, even if you didn't have a high score, but like, you're sitting there and you realize, okay, I'm where I want to be?
There was a run I had. I'm not sure what year it is. I would guess it would be 2013 or 12, maybe. I made 2 WPT final tables, one at Borgata, one at Jacksonville. Probably cashed for around 400,000 between the two of them. And it wasn't until then that I really felt comfortable and like I was winning live. Because when I first started playing live from the online arena, I wasn't a good live player. I was a losing player. I was used to playing 10 tables at once. I was too aggressive. Also, like I wasn't very self-aware of my image too, where I was a young kid wearing headphones, trying to win every hand, 21-year-old kid. Like I was what I looked like. Of course I'm trying to bluff
Right.
everybody. And like it makes sense that I didn't have great results. So it kind of took me 2, 3, 4 years to figure out the live game and kind of grow up and be a little more patient.
Hmm. Can you kind of, I mean, that's like when you said also like, to really go all in and make this your lifestyle, even Darren Elias, it took many years. That's a fascinating. You say it took, 2013. After you'd done all that playing live, it still took you 4 or 5 years to reach that. Could you kind of sort of describe that progression, especially if you're saying you're kind of the outlier or lone wolf? What is it that you did to sort of improve on your game? And, how were you different at that point in 2013 than when you started playing live, as a 21-year-old?
Well, I think for one, it's very important to keep results and data. So I would always look at my results and be like, wow, I've played 40 live tournaments in a row and I haven't cashed one. Something must be wrong. And then I've always been able to objectively self-evaluate and analyze my play, which I think not a lot of players are able to do without being biased and go, oh, I got unlucky, or oh, I just got coolered. Where I've always been able to separate myself from the hand and be like, wow, I actually made some mistakes here. And what can I do to prevent that from happening again? So kind of that self-analysis and looking at the hands going forward was part of my progression, I guess, to become a good live player. And then just generally playing tighter, paying more attention to my opponents. And there's also this thing where I think players who come from the online arena kind of like look down on live players where, oh, they're worse. I won all this money playing online. And I kind of had that chip on my shoulder a little bit when I first came in, like, oh, I'm just going to run these guys over. I'm better than them. And that's a negative thing to have in your game. You don't want that. And you have to respect your opponents and at least pay attention to how they're playing, even if it's poorly, to understand the strategy and how to beat it. Where I was kind of just blindly playing my game and that wasn't working.
I'd say the inverse is also true. I mean, I remember hearing, all the old guard, they said, who are these online kids coming in? We'll wipe the floor with them. Now you've straddled both sides of the aisle there. You would say also it's important for the live guys to respect the online guys too?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was just watching last night, 50K Pot Limit Omaha. You've got two of the best online players of all time there at the final table, or at least one, the Omaha for Rolls, playing against Phil Hellmuth and Daniel Negreanu.
Yep.
And it's great. We'll always have that debate and the clash. And I'm a little biased towards the online side. I think the online players are fundamentally stronger, understand the game better, have just logged more hands, done more study. But there is still something to live experience. So I'm not gonna say live players are bad, but there are things that they do worse and there are things that they do better.
Sure. Well, like any sport, there's always some sort of an evolution. Tennis rackets get better, and there's always something. And in basketball, you start reviewing the tape of the previous games. We all know that poker has evolved seemingly very, very quickly over the last few years. You've managed to, maintain your position on top of the game and continue to see success. How has your game, obviously without giving any secrets or anything, but generally speaking, how has your game evolved over the last, 5 to 7 years or so? What is it that you do differently or practice that kind of, keeps you sharp?
I think now, especially recently with the evolution of these solvers, these poker solvers, where software where a computer plays itself and kind of comes up with an equilibrium solution that you can't beat. And I mean, I've had a lot of experience with that. I did a project with Carnegie Mellon and Facebook AI where I basically tested their poker bot for
I didn't know you were doing that. Okay, cool. I remember that.
Tens of thousands of hands. And most of the high stakes players nowadays use some version of this software, whether it be PO Solver or Monk or something like that. And it's changed the game in the sense that 5 or 10 years ago, you would play a hand in a big tournament and you'd be, oh, like, did I do the right thing? What happened there? You ask your friends, you get some opinions. Where now a lot of these guys will just type it in their solver and it's almost like math class where you check the back of the book to see if you get the answer right. And sometimes that's correct. Like, and generally the higher stakes you're playing, the more fundamentally sound players are playing. the more accurate and meaningful those answers are. But I think if you're playing high stakes nowadays, you kind of have to be paying attention to that stuff and at least acknowledging the solutions to some of these hands.
Well, that's interesting. This as you're saying it, I realize there's a question I've never really asked any poker pro. It's kind of known that, like you're saying, okay, so there's solvers, right? And that's just the way study is conducted these days. Okay. Is that enjoyable, or do you kind of look at it as like, well, a necessary evil in order to get where you want to get? Is there part of you, especially considering your, mathematics and physics background, that, kind of like, oh, this is cool. I enjoy the process too.
I do enjoy the theory and the solutions and kind of, because you get the answers, but you don't get the why. So there is still that mental leap you have to take. Like, why did the computer raise this group of hands on this board to this size? When it's not something I would do naturally, it doesn't make sense. So to kind of try to figure that out, like, why would it do that? And then apply it to a bunch of other spots, because in poker, there's so much like resonance in one concept will apply to hundreds of different spots. So kind of seeing those results from the computer and then extrapolating across all these different things, that's exciting to me. I like that. I do wish the software and stuff was a little cleaner and easier to use. There's a learning curve with that stuff, and for an old guy, I'm 35, it's a little tough to work the software sometimes, but I enjoy it. I don't think it's too tedious.
I'm laughing because if you're old, then what am I at 40? Anyway, let's take a step back. It's always good to change gears a little bit. Let's go from the poker to the personal. I know you're coming to us today from Las Vegas. You're about to resume play in the 50K, one of the last events of the World Series. But where are you from? I mean, Wikipedia says New Jersey, Hendon Bob says Philadelphia, Card Player Magazine says LA. So where's home, Darren?
I live in New Jersey right now. My wife is from New Jersey, kind of we live now in a suburb of Philadelphia, about 40 minutes east. But I moved around a ton growing up because, like I said, my dad's a football coach. So it was almost like a military lifestyle where I moved around 6 different states before high school, mostly on the East Coast. I lived in Boston, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, Louisiana, eventually in Pennsylvania, where I went to high school, and actually went to college in California to play water polo and swimming. I did sports out there, and then met my wife and have lived in New Jersey for the last 10 years.
A lot of people would say moving around, especially at those tender young ages, is not necessarily so easy. Most of the people I know, most of the people know, you kind of not, you're born, live, and die in the same place, but you have roots, and you've been somewhere for a while. Was that like an easy thing or something you enjoyed, all that moving around, or you kind of regret not having a one place?
It was definitely difficult. Looking back and kind of like reflecting, I guess it made me who I am, in the sense that I was very withdrawn and not very social, where I would just move to a new place. I wouldn't know anybody. I would get on the computer and play cards, or just get into a certain hobby and really immerse myself, where I wasn't as social. I mean, in high school, a little later I was, but moving around at a young age, I kept to myself and really let my hobbies and interests flourish on my own, where I wasn't as social as most people, I would say.
That's interesting. Well, obviously, at least while talking about things you're passionate about, pretty darn social. So I'm enjoying this conversation. Well, speaking of moving around, obviously you've played in a ton of poker rooms and casinos around the world. Do you have a favorite one, either in the United States or around the world somewhere?
I really like the Win. I'm enjoying playing at the Win, the Encore, especially right now. I think they're doing a great job over there with the tournaments. Beautiful room, nice chairs. They don't play 10-handed, good service. I think Ray, is the tournament poker director over there. He's putting on some huge tournaments. They have these new mystery bounty things where you pull out a 100,000 thing. Also enjoy playing the Aria. Our Aria is good. They have the Poker Studio over there. So Aria and Win, I'd say, are my 2 favorite rooms. A lot of good memories at the Borgata.
Cool.
That's that was my home casino growing up, but also where I won my first WPT. So a lot of good memories there. Those are the 3 that kind of come to mind in the States.
Cool. And when you go to Borgata, is it kind of like a homecoming of sorts? Like, oh, you just settle right back in?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely know a lot of the regulars there. I even know the staff, and I've been playing there since I turned 21. Cash games tournaments, so that is home.
Very cool. Okay. So, okay, well, home and traveling, what in a regular year, let's say non-pandemic year, what percentage of the year do you find yourself kind of like traveling versus, just kind of staying in one place and I guess playing online?
I would say about a week and a half or 2 weeks out of every month I'm traveling. I'm traveling quite a bit, mostly in the US. I play about 50 to 55 tournaments a year. I'm pretty consistent on what I play, the schedule of the tournaments.
Mhm.
I keep my records. I don't think I'm ever under 50 or over 60. Um, but I usually that's about my limit, where I don't like long trips, long festivals. Like the World Series is tough for me. Actually, I'm in Vegas and have been here since the start of the World Series, but have made 3 different trips. So
Okay.
I'm here a week and a half. I go home a week. I don't really enjoy being away a month. Tough on my family. I have two young kids. So a week and a half is kind of my number, where I love to, when you first leave, you're excited to get away and play poker. And when you're done, you're excited to go home. And that's kind of the amount of time where it's perfect for me.
I hear that. It's not a question I had planned, but since you mentioned it, what has obviously, when you're playing, you're sitting and playing and stuff, but straddling that balance, when you go back to the airport and say, okay, I'm going home now. What are those days like when you're not playing, when you get to be back at home and kind of recharge those batteries?
It's quite the dichotomy, like one day I'm in these high rollers staring down some savage in a huge pot for a lot of equity. The next day I'm dressing up like Elsa playing like golf. It's really something. I think I'm able, because poker's so intense, and when I'm here I'm really immersed, that when I go home I kind of just check out from poker and just try to be a dad and
Awesome.
be a dad, be a husband, help out around the house, and I'll do a little poker study or maybe play a Sunday online. But when I'm home, I'm not spending a ton of time on poker.
I hear that. Well, I'm a dad to 3 kids as well, so I understand that having to flip the switch. It's pretty cool to hear. It's nice. How old are your kids, if I can ask?
1 and 4.
Wow, special. Good. Very nice. Enjoy that time. Special times. Well, during that pandemic, and I did mention it, for poker players, thankfully, depending on your jurisdictions where you live, most of the professionals were able to at least turn and transition a little bit to live. Someone like yourself, with that extensive, sorry, it turned to online. With that extensive online experience, I imagine it was a relatively easier transition. What was that sort of, I guess, year to year and a half period like? Were you just kind of like antsy to get back on the plane, or were you kind of enjoying a very strange time to just sort of be at home?
We're talking about the pandemic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting, where at first I was just kind of like, what's happening, and just spending time with my family, catching up with old friends. But as it became apparent how it was going to last a while, I kind of had to ask myself, like, I'm not going to be able to work and play live. I'm going to have to start, either, because in the last 3 or 4 years, I wasn't playing a ton online. Most of my volume was live. So I kind of had to ask myself, am I really going to go back into this world and play online? And if I do it, I don't want to like half-ass it. I either want to actually get the money on there, play, grind, study, or not play at all. And I ended up playing again in probably April of that pandemic, and played a lot that year, kind of tailing off towards the beginning of this year, stopped playing as much, but played Sundays, played high stakes. And now I think I'm transitioning more towards these American BetMGM, and it's where back then it was playing more abroad.
Got it. Well, okay, gotta switch gears again, because I do want to talk obviously about, you mentioned BetMGM, and we've got a cool series to promote. We'll get to that towards the end of my questions. But I was listening to a different podcast. My good friend Chad Holloway interviewed you recently on the Poker News podcast, and he kind of mentioned, of course, the most successful WPT champion and titles and stuff. And at the end of the day, a felt is a felt. That's kind of the way you described it, and just happens to be your more successful WPT. But from the WPT standpoint, of course, they really love promoting their champions, and for better or for worse, you've kind of de facto become, not Mr. WPT, all due respect to, Vince Van Patten and Tony Dunst. What does that sort of mean to you to kind of like have that association with the World Poker Tour?
Well, I'm proud of my accomplishments on the World Poker Tour. Being able to do something nobody else has done, that's cool. It is a little bit of like a needle or backhanded compliment when it's like, oh, he only wins on the WPT or something like that. But I don't let that get to me too much, and I just try to show up and play my best wherever I'm playing. World Series, online, WPT, cash game, tournament. I'm just going to try to show up and play my best, and can only hope that the results will follow in other venues at the World Series, things like that. Hopefully today we get it going in the 50K.
Yep. I hope so for your sake too. Hope you get the Cards Chat podcast run good. Do you have a particularly favorite memory from all of your time during the WPT, or particularly favorite tournament to play in?
Probably my favorite memory would be at Borgata when I won my first title, because that was my home casino. I had my family there, my wife, my dad, my brother. They don't get to see me play poker very often, and to be at that like live final table in my home casino and win it and have them there, that was special. Also, my biggest score still, even to date, money wise, that was big. So that's definitely my favorite memory, and like breakthrough first live major tournament. That'll stick with me.
That's cool. Do you feel like when you're there, you have any sort of home court advantage? Is that a thing, or I'm just, maybe I'm projecting?
No, I think so. And most of the home court advantage kind of comes from knowledge of opponents, I think, where the regulars, where like this guy I've played with for 10 years, I know what he does. He plays cash games here. I think that's a big part of home court advantage that is real. I mean, that's tangible. You have knowledge of an opponent's strategy, and you can use that to your advantage.
Got it. Oh, cool. That's interesting to get. I've never actually heard someone, go into detail what that means before. That's pretty cool. Well, I combed through the multitude of Hendon Mob results, and all of a sudden there's one that kind of just sort of stood out to me. It's a veritable sea of no limit hold'em. And then all of a sudden, June 2019 at the WSOP, you placed third in a deuce 7 lowball 10K event for over $109,000. So you play mixed games, or you accidentally entered the wrong tournament? Like, what's the story there exactly?
I would say I don't play mixed games, but I do play that game. I play no limit single draw. It is basically the only other game I play. I don't really enjoy limit games. I don't find them too exciting. So I started playing this in like a home game with my friends maybe 10, 15 years ago. Played a lot of cash games online, high stakes, heads up, and then kind of found some bigger live low ball games in Las Vegas, playing in Bobby's room with Billy Baxter, Doyle Brunson, those kind of guys. So I actually got a lot of experience in this game at high stakes. And from a strategical standpoint, it's like the purest poker game. It's my absolute favorite. But very rarely do you get to play it. It's just not spread very often. And most of the time, if it is, it's in a mix with 5 or 6 other games I don't know how to play. So I always circle that one on the calendar, the 10,000 deuce to 7 at the World Series. And I think I've got third twice now, but one of my favorite tournaments.
Interesting. I'm curiosity. Like, so I'll reorder these questions because you mentioned it. So walking into Bobby's room, playing with Doyle, with Billy Baxter in a game that's clearly, they've got more experience than you do at that particular game. Any trepidation whatsoever?
No, it kind of goes back to your online versus live thing, where in my head, I'm thinking, I understand this game better than these guys strategically, fundamentally. And they're looking at me like, we've been playing this game 60 years. This kid doesn't know what he's like. It's probably a little bit of like both, where we're underestimating each other, and we're probably closer than both of us think. But that, when any trepidation I had was washed away, just because it's a good environment in there. I really enjoy playing with Billy Baxter, and you get to hear some of these old time stories. I mean, this guy backed Stu Unger, and like as a poker fan and someone who enjoys the history, I love to hear stories about that kind of stuff. And he's like 80, 85 years old, so who knows how much longer we'll be able to enjoy that kind of stuff. So I really like that.
For sure. I guess that's the extra added value, that you get from playing in games like those.
Entertainment.
And I have to admit here, perhaps this is probably this is a very flawed assumption, especially you saying you're playing cash games in Bobby's room. When I think of the name, like I said, we've never really crossed paths before, but I, of course, know what you've done in poker. And when I think the name Darren Elias, my brain kind of like immediately associates it with wildly successful tournament pro. So how often do you play cash games, and to what extent is that association completely off?
Nowadays, with the evolution of cash games where everything has been privatized at the high stakes, I don't play very often because
Okay.
I don't get invited to a lot of games, and I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna like yak it up with a fish and like make him feel comfortable and all. I'm not gonna play the game of the networking and all that
Okay.
stuff. So I will say I played a ton of cash games live in my 20s, like 21 to 30, and probably was more profitable than I was in tournaments. So people on the East Coast know that. People Borgata, LA kind of have played a lot with me, and mostly played 10, 25, 25, 50, 50, 100-ish, no limit in my 20s. And I think it's kind of looking like that is in my past with how games are going. And I don't think we're gonna return to a time where big cash games are just public and open. So now if I do get to play, it's in some kind of TV special game. But I have played a lot of live cash games.
Cool. Okay. And anyone who's listening, Darren's clearly looking for an invite to the next Poker After Dark or High Stakes.
I won't hold my breath.
I'd like to see that. Sounds interesting. Let's go to Above the Felt. You were one of the first 4 poker pros, along with, I believe it was Matt Berkey, Chris Moneymaker, and Jamie Kerstetter, to sign with the Above the Felt talent agency. So that's run by also our mutually good friend Tom Wheaton. How did that sort of come about?
I was in the Aria having a drink, and Tom came up to me. We had a drink together, hung out for an hour or two, and then I think he reached out to me maybe a year or so later and said, I have this idea about this talent management agency kind of thing. And I've always been open to things like that, but it's not something that I'm gonna be assertive on. And like, I'm not a salesman. I'm not gonna like sell myself and go to people, spend time reaching out and things like that. My goal has always been to play poker and be good at poker and practice and perform. So to have someone who's like, oh, I'm willing to do this for you. And I've never been against these kind of opportunities. Like if Card Room wants me to come play or meet people or this kind of stuff, I've always been open to, but never been willing to go out and get. So I think it's kind of a mutually beneficial thing where he can kind of arrange deals and opportunities. And I mostly play poker.
Cool. Okay. So what, as an example, what kinds of opportunities has, signing brought your way in, and what have you enjoyed most about kind of having that, that manager, so to speak?
We went down to Texas where they recently kind of legalized poker, and I got to play in Houston. They invited me down to play a tournament and some cash games, and that was fun to see, and something Tom arranged where I wouldn't have gone and played a $1,300 tournament in Houston. But it was fun to see like what's going on down there and like how poker is in America. I enjoyed that. And then obviously now we're working with BetMGM and Party Poker US, which Above the Felt, Tom helped broker. Enjoying that so far. It's a different experience for me, but something I'm liking so far.
Right. So that dovetails actually pretty nicely into my next question. You have begun representing Party Poker, BetMGM. It's one thing when, your trusted friend manager, Tom Wheaton presents you, hey, this is an opportunity. What makes you, though, the player, beyond, okay, a nice opportunity, what makes you choose a Party Poker, BetMGM? What specifically, about that company say, yeah, I'd like to represent these guys?
Well, they're kind of the leader in my jurisdiction, and I'm pretty passionate about poker in America. And they're located in New Jersey, Michigan, PA. I play in New Jersey, and I've always felt terrible for the American poker player who's had to kind of like live in the shadows and play on illegal sites or VPN or something. Where I want it to be easy, I want it to be legalized. I think down the line, if we can get more states involved, link things up, that online poker in America can be a great thing again. And the people at BetMGM and Party Poker are behind it and are willing to invest the money and the time to kind of make poker big again in the US. And I think the demand is there. Just looking around at tournaments, like poker is prospering right now in America. So I think everything lines up where if we can get legislation passed and get everything rolling, that we can have a good couple years ahead.
That's awesome. I gotta say also, it's just so encouraging to hear. I imagine a lot of folks who are listening, who are watching this, like, yeah. You go preach, man. Yeah, that's really cool to hear.
They've had it tough for a long time. I mean, I've understood, like, since Black Friday, it's been hard to be an American poker pro who wants to play online.
Yeah.
So to finally have some opportunities, it's exciting for once.
Yeah, and not just a poker pro, but just, you want to go ahead and play for a few hours on a Sunday when, just as a rec, just like having it available, legal, you can deposit, put your money on, off, there's something really nice. That's like, the Wild West old days, pre-Black Friday. It's nice to be able to do that again and see it, legalized in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Michigan, as you say. Of course, we've alluded to it a couple times and mentioned in the intro. As this episode gets released, you'll already be battling out at the online felt, hosting the BetMGM End Boss Poker Series on the Party Poker US network. How did this series come about? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, working with Tom and BetMGM and Party Poker, we wanted to put some kind of series on this month, kind of around Thanksgiving, and I was able to help design the schedule. I wanted to be a little higher stakes than usual on the New Jersey sites. I think we have $1,000 main event buy-in and $200, $500 tournaments mostly. So we kind of wanted to put that together, and then some special element where winner of the main event will be crowned the end boss of their state, and they will win a ticket into a later event. And if you knock me out of New Jersey, you win a three-night, 2-day stay in at the Borgata, which is cool. So we have all these little like promos going on, and actually qualifying a lot of players from the sports book too, which is pretty cool. Because BetMGM, well known for their sports betting market, and to bring some of those players over to poker, I think is great.
Cool. And when you say you kind of had a hand in designing it, you were, actively helping with the structures, or what is it that you were involved in specifically?
More the buy-ins and the schedule than the structures. I'm able a little bit to suggest guarantees and buy-in levels and what tournaments on what day and what formats. So mostly that, which is fun. And I look forward to doing that in the future, and maybe even in live events. So if BetMGM Party Poker were to have a live event at one of their properties in the US, I'd have a good time designing that schedule. And I think my experience gives me some idea of what players want and at what price points would work in America.
Nice. So again, that's New Jersey, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Get your butts over after, of course, you finish listening to the Cards Chat podcast here and start playing in the End Boss series. A couple more questions before we get into the community questions. I know our time is limited. You got, the next day of play at WSOP coming up. Darren, I noticed you're sitting in 4th place on the New Jersey all-time money list. Damn impressive. 2-part question. Do you know who's ahead of you, first of all?
Got to be Phil Ivey. I would think he's from New Jersey. Tom Marchese.
Yep. And one more.
That was going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it is. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah. Tom Dwan? No, he probably hasn't played that many tournaments.
He's behind you. And you're also ahead of Scott Blumstein. Main event winner.
Chris Klodnicki, I think.
That's the one.
Is it? Is it Claude?
That's it. Okay. 3 for 3. So is it a goal of yours to, Ivy's Ivy, okay, but maybe to hit number 2 someday? Is that a thing, or just, cute stat?
Yeah, more of a cute stat. I don't set too many like monetary goals like that. And nowadays with some of the buy-ins on these tournaments have made these numbers a little ridiculous, where we'll have guys who have 50 million, 100 million in earnings, where these numbers are pretty inflated. I don't play a ton of the 250,000 million. I play a couple, but not as many as most. So those numbers are getting a little outrageous, but it's fun to watch. And every once in a while I'll check, where am I on the all-time money list or something?
Right. Well, hopefully, again, as this will be released, the tournament will have ended, and you'll have a nice little score or a nice big
That'd be nice.
score in the 50K at the WSOP. Let's hope. Last question from me. The WSOP is basically, let's say, just ended. You've got, the End Boss Poker Series going on online. How about the rest of the year, 2022? Have you started thinking about and planning out your schedule, or it's just like, bring on the holidays, let me chill a little bit?
I usually plan out the next couple months. So I know I'll be home for the holidays. I'll be playing online this series. And then pretty soon after, I'll be headed back here for Five Diamond at Bellagio. That's always a must play event for me. $10,000 buy-in, 100 runners, WPT.
Yep.
Just a real special event. We'll play that, a couple other side events. I think the Win has added a $5,000 event in December. I'll play before Christmas. Come home for Christmas, the holidays, and haven't really looked forward to January yet. I'm not sure what 2022 will hold, but probably some live poker.
Yeah, good. Sounds like a good schedule. Maybe a fifth WPT title waiting in the wings for you.
That'd be a good one to win.
Yeah. All right. Well, in this segment of the show, we turn to you guys, our Cards Chat community, to see what questions you wanted to ask our guests. We have a dedicated thread on the Cards Chat forums for this. So as we announce who our future guests will be, please be sure to send in your questions. As you know, Darren, here this one is from Crystals. Crystals, thank you very much. You recently tweeted this, says Crystals. A big part of what makes pros successful over the long term is our ability to distance ourselves from the monetary and emotional swings of the game, but it can leave us jaded. It's great to see the other side. So Crystals is asking, how do you think pros can rediscover the passion in poker that you see in amateurs?
Man, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. It's interesting. Like, I don't know, because poker players, even if I put a 2-outer on somebody deep in a huge tournament, I still don't think I'm gonna like celebrate and fist pump like a recreational player would. And I don't really know if there's an easy way to rediscover that. I would say playing higher stakes, maybe where it means more. You might see some more emotion, but that's kind of the point of my tweet, is that I'm almost jealous of these recreational players, that they can be so themselves and release all these emotions. And it reminds me of when I first started playing, like 1-2, 2-5. I was so excited of the game, and I am envious of the lower stakes recreational players in that regard. And for us, it's very difficult to kind of get back to that, where I'm passionate about poker. All high stakes players are passionate about poker, but we want to execute, we want to perform, we want to win money, and it's more of a business, and it's more cold and calculated than what I'm referencing there.
That's fair. Very honest answer. And I got to say, like I said, we've never really met in person before, but next time I'm in Vegas, if you happen to be around, I'll be playing 1-3. I'm happy to invite you, and we'll
Sure.
recapture some of that passion. Maybe you'll take all my money, but hopefully you'll have a good time.
Probably
Second question from Crystals. Darren, you commented recently that it doesn't matter how much you study that makes you a good poker player. You have to go and execute. So if you were to give advice to recreational players, what training materials should they look for, and how much should one study?
I would say getting a hold of some pre-flop charts would be a good start for recreational players, because that's kind of, if you have some big leaks in your game, they all kind of stem from pre-flop, and then you're making these, you make a small error pre-flop, it compounds on the flop turn, and then all of a sudden you've made 3 or 4 mistakes in one hand, and you're losing a lot of money. So I would say start there, and those are kind of like readily available, pretty easy to find somewhere online, where you can get a pre-flop chart for which hands should I call with or open with in certain position. And I wouldn't set a time where, I have to study 2 hours a day or something like that, but do it when it feels natural, and do it when you want to do it would be my suggestion, where I'm always more productive and retain more information when I want to be doing something. So whenever I'm studying poker, I'm into it, I'm enjoying it. So I think that would be my tip there, where don't set a time, just whenever you're curious about something or want to study, pull up a chart.
I like it. No shortcuts though. You still gotta memorize those thoughts and stuff. Acid Burn FX, always great, who chimes in with a bunch of questions. We've got a few here. We'll get through as many as we can before the end of the show. Thank you, Acid Burn FX. Wants to know, Darren, I love it. What is the weirdest place that you've played poker for money?
Oh, let me think about this for a little bit. Definitely played on a bus on a field trip in high school. We used to play and kind of like, you'd be like looking over the seat at the other guy. We used to play on like field trips in high school. Weirdest place, yeah, probably that. I don't think I've played anywhere weirder than that. I tweeted this out when I was in high school. This isn't a location, but we're like 16 years old and we wouldn't play for money, but we'd play like a 3 or 4-handed sit and go, and the first one out would have to eat chocolate laxative. So that was as high stakes as it got back then because we didn't have much money. So
oh boy. I think we'll leave that one there. What Acid Burn FX, another couple of them. What is your favorite gambling movie and why?
I think it's got to be Rounders. Just such a classic and related to poker. I like Casino. Casino is a good game too. A good movie too. But tough to beat Rounders. Big Matt Damon fan. Ed Norton. It's about poker. Good story. Gonna be tough to find poker players who don't say Rounders there, I think.
Okay, that's fair. I am partial to Casino as well. Like specifically Don Rickles' interesting role there. It's good stuff
for sure.
And we'll end off with this one from Acid Burn FX. Thank you. Always just some great creative questions here. Darren, what was your most embarrassing moment in poker?
Oh, this is easy actually. In the 10K Deuce to 7 championship event in that 2019 one where I finished third, I got dealt 6 cards with 2 tables left and I played them. So somebody, Prahlad Freeman raised and I 3-bet him. I had a Pat Jack, but I had 6 cards and I didn't realize it. I kind of just looked at it and I said, oh, I have a Jack, and I 3-bet him and he called. And then I looked back for the next betting round and I'm like, well, I have 6 cards. So I have to be at floor. I have 6 cards. And they're like, well, your hand is dead. You're an idiot. You lose this spot. So even pros make mistakes like that, and that happens. But that's one I remember recently where I'm like, wow, I'm an idiot.
That is fair. Nice lighthearted note, I suppose, at least after the fact to end off here.
It probably cost me $5,000.
Oh gosh, I'm so well. I apologize. Didn't mean to bring up a bad.
No, it's fine. No.
What's 5K anyway, right? Thanks to everyone who sent in your questions for Darren Elias. Just a friendly reminder to all you out there in the Cards Chat community, we'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread on the forums. Please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels if you liked the show. Darren, before you go and head off to WSOP land, anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, happy to come on here and talk to you guys. I think poker forums are great for meeting people, discussing the game, and I hope a lot of your listeners can get on BetMGM Party Poker in the US and play some online poker.
Sweet. Awesome. Darren, thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in once again to another episode of the Cards Chat podcast. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife. I wish you all a wonderful day.